Thank you for tuning in to the Helium Radio Network. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
We're live here in the Miami Book Fair, powered by Life Improvement Radio, the Neil Haley Show. And as I thought about it, again, 8 years broadcasting from Miami, and all of it's available again at heliumradio.com or lifeimprovementradio.com. The interviews I've had so far, every one of them is so amazing, especially when you do something live. You never know what's going to happen. You never know who's going to show up. And you have great helpers like Armando and my co-host who's producing the entire thing, Eric Remmel of Life Improvement Radio. Eric, continued great guest. First hour down, and we do 5 hours today, right? 4 more hours to go.
Yep, only 4 hours left. Excited to keep going, rolling through. It's a marathon interviews.
Exactly. I was talking to you before. So at one point in time, when the dust clears, who knows what we'll end up doing as a crazy authors. But again, interview the best, come to Miami. So I'm excited to welcome to the program. We right now have on the line Lori Gottlieb, author of Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Lori, thanks for calling. How are you?
Hi, good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and we're just going to go right to love the topic, but again, congratulations on your TED Talks and all the different things that you do, Lori. But ultimately, your whole goal of why you write, why you speak, is to help others, right? Correct? As we can even talk about in your current profession, right? It's all about helping.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is a book, I think about showing people that they aren't alone in whatever they go through in the human condition. So this is, about how we're all more the same than we are different. And I show that through the stories of 4 of my patients. And then I'm the 5th patient in the book. And, you get to see me as both the patient and the clinician helping people get through life.
And it doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter who you are as a person. All of us are going to have troubles. All of us are going to have problems. And it's how we deal with these problems. Isn't that correct? But we can't do it by dealing with it on our own. We have to have somebody to talk to.
Yeah, so many times I think people think that they, that they don't need to talk to someone. And, the title of the book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, doesn't necessarily mean you should talk to a therapist, although that's really helpful for a lot of people. But it means that we need to talk more to each other and in a real way, not, through technology, but actually sitting in a room face-to-face with another person without distractions, without something ringing or vibrating or pinging, when you're trying to spend some time with someone. And I think so many of us think that we're the only ones going through something because we are embarrassed to talk about what's really going on.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Lori, with the rise of technology and the change in literally how people communicate with each other, or as you just pointed out, don't communicate with each other. Have you seen a rise of mental health issues, or just a change in behaviors based on how technology is progressing? I
think that there's a culture of loneliness, even if you're surrounded by people who love you. I see a lot of couples, and I'll hear a lot about, people who are married who they co-compute at night. They're like in the same room, but they're on different screens. I just think that a lot of us are not, we spend a lot of time in front of a screen instead of in front of another person. When I was a colleague of mine said that the internet is like the most effective short-term non-prescription painkiller out there, meaning that a lot of us numb our pain through whether it's food or alcohol or, whatever it is. It's a lot of times it's the internet where we're just spending hours and hours and hours doing what instead of dealing with whatever feelings we might be having and getting help for them.
And it makes us feel bad a lot of times, especially the Facebooks of the world or the Instagrams of the world. Why don't I have this? Why don't I have that? And ultimately, it's a lie.
Right.
Most of social media is a complete lie. Yeah.
Right. And so, well, it's a curated version. It's interesting because someone can come in to me for therapy and I know what is really going on in their lives, and yet they're posting things about their lives that look completely different. And a lot of times when people come to therapy, they say, I think it's different for men and women. Men will come in and say, I've never told anyone this before. And then what they tell me feels really mild, and I have so much compassion for them because they feel like there's no one that they can really open up to about their lives. And women will come in and they'll say, I've never told anyone this before except for my mother, my sister, and my best friend, right? So they have maybe 1 to 3 people that they've told, but they still, I think we have so much shame around what's really going on, and we'll post all the time about, whatever we want to show to the world, but why are we ashamed to show the entirety of our experience to the people who are close to us?
Because we care what people think. And how do we get rid of that? And where does that come from? Where does that come from, caring what people think? Ultimately, meaning caring what people think in your immediate family. That's important at times to do that, especially if you're on the same wavelength. But when you talk about people that are strangers, that never really see you, and to be embarrassed by being out in those specific areas or caring what somebody that the best decision, but you care what people think that will kind of change the way you act is ridiculous. And it really hurts your life to really live life.
Right, and it keeps people feeling very isolated and very lonely. The stories in the book, the 4 patients that I follow, they seem really different from each other on the surface. And they might feel very different from the reader, but every single person who has read the book said, I saw myself in these people because ultimately I deal with the same questions about life. I deal with the same struggles in relationships. I deal with the same self-loathing at times, right? All of those things, the ways that we are so unkind to ourselves and the ways that we talk to ourselves, that's really universal. And so I think that it's important to be able to know that it's normal. And I think so many people don't talk about things because they feel like they're different.
So the bottom line is ultimately we all pretty much are sharing the same issues, or most of us have the same problems. But if we talk to each other more, we'd all see that.
Right, and we would feel better. And I think, there's so much, I think there's a lot of, if you look at the rates of depression and anxiety, I think a lot of it is that we don't have the connections, the community, the social support in the same ways. We're very connected on technology, and I'm not anti-technology at all, but I think that we have to have both. And one of the things that I think people learn from going to therapy is just how to enrich their relationships in a way that leaves them, life is hard sometimes. And when you have good relationships, life, even the hard times are easier because you have those people surrounding you.
And
Absolutely.
It's sad how things can change so dramatically in your life and then flip back again. And if you don't have an optimistic outlook in life and understand we're going to have these challenges, but we're going to overcome and move forward and things are going to be better, you will always think things are always going to be bad, right? We go through a challenge. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and you also have to know how you're contributing to whatever's not working in your life, and that's what therapy does really well. So your friends will offer you, in a situation, what we call idiot compassion, right? They'll go along with your story, like, oh, that's terrible that you didn't get that job, or that's terrible that this person broke up with you. But there might be something that you're doing that gets you into this situation over and over, and what a therapist can do is to help you to see. They offer wise compassion, which is they hold up a mirror to you so you can see your reflection and you can see these blind spots. You can see these patterns of how sometimes it's so human to get in our own ways where we don't realize that sometimes we are the cause of our problems. Yet, yes, there are difficult situations and people out there, but the ways that we're making choices in our lives and the ways that we're reacting sometimes are causing us more trouble than need be. And if we can make changes in our lives, often we find ourselves in a much better place overall, not just with the one situation that we came into therapy with, but in all aspects of our lives.
And you got it, and then something makes you feel better, but yet you had to cut off certain things to do it. That's what a therapist will show you. A therapist or the right person to talk to that is trained to understand, to listen to the person, offer advice when needed, or offer suggestions when needed, but never to be a person that's going to be a bias in some sort of way, that's going to lead you to a decision based on what they want, not what's best for the person.
Right. It's giving a person choices. It's helping them to see things more clearly so they can choose what feels right for them. But at least they're choosing it from a place of seeing things more objectively. When people first come into therapy, their stories are very subjective. This is what my TED Talk is about, that we're all unreliable narrators of our lives, that we're telling our story from a very narrow perspective, usually in a time of crisis. And so when we can see the other perspectives in the story, we can make better choices about what we want to do.
That ideology of what we look at and let our brains make the decisions for us without getting feedback from people, listening to people, seeing different choices, and it could be from your business to your family to ultimately your health. There are just multiple ways of looking at making the right choice. You can't go and rely on specifically enough your perspective through your brain, which your brain can trick you many times, right? You definitely have to hear feedback from other people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. And I think sometimes people don't realize that they can use their feelings like a compass, like a GPS. People don't want to feel certain feelings, so they'll say, well, I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to be envious of this person's life. But I always say, follow your envy. It tells you what you want. So it's a sign to you to say, hey, I want more of that. So instead of dwelling in what you don't have, say, what steps can I take to get my version of that thing that I want? When you're feeling sad, well, what's not working in my life? When you're feeling anxious, it's a sign to say, something is causing this anxiety. Let me figure out what it is so that I can do something differently.
No, you got it. It's so true. And but what did you learn from looking at yourself in your life in this book and then using your expertise to help yourself? That's just very interesting. I find that so intriguing for the final person being yourself.
Right. I think that when you're a therapist and you go to therapy, you're very much just a person in the room. You're not being a therapist. You don't see yourself in the same way that a person who's not living your life sees you. And the person who's not living your life can often help you to see things that you aren't seeing or you aren't seeing clearly. And that's what my therapist did for me. So I think the reason that I came into therapy was about the breakup of a relationship. And, I had a very specific version of that story, and he helped me to see what my role was in the story too. And it was really, really helpful. And he helped me to see that what I was really dealing with, were these questions about midlife and meaning and, where I was in my life that had even went way beyond the issue of this person that I was going to marry. So therapy was really helpful in that way. And it's not about the therapist being a therapist for themselves. It's about going to another person who can see them, who can help see them in a different way and help them to see themselves in a different way.
I have never watched a therapist work week after week on TV except The Sopranos. So I'm just going to say that's where I see myself when I look at therapists and how Dr. Melfi works with Tony Soprano. Just the FYI 20-year anniversary of The Sopranos. You never thought I'd bring up that one, but that I have firsthand experience working with therapists. But when I think about week after week and see how they work through certain things, that's Tony Soprano is the perfect case study that a guy that literally did not want therapy and fought through everything and yet went through different changes and struggles, and that's what everyone needs, is someone to talk to regardless of how stressful their situation is. So I had to just bring that up just because of my entertainment stuff and all that stuff. But look at Tony Soprano and look at specifically the therapy of your job and how challenging it is listening to other people all the time.
Well, I don't
and
think
how you...
a lot of people say that, how do you listen to people's problems all day? I think, and you can see that in the book, and if people want to see more of what therapy looks like every week, they can read the book, because I think that's what I'm trying to show them, is that it's really hopeful and it's funny and it's inspiring. And, I think that people make changes all the time that are heroic. They did something different in the week between this session and the next session, and over time those little changes add up to huge changes. And you see that in the book. You see how these people make really substantial changes in their lives, and it's not all tied up in a bow at the end, but it's real life in a really inspiring, hopeful, heroic way. So, and they're making this book into a television series too. And I hope that what people will see is what they see in the book, which is, a really engaging, interesting depiction of the human condition through the lens of therapy.
I saw that. That's awesome. And is it, in what phase is it? Because I'll have to have you on, or people that are going to be on the show for sure down the line of all the celebrity interviews I do. So we'll have to stay in touch for sure.
Yeah, it's Eva Longoria's company is producing the show, and the creators of The Americans are writing the show.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of The Americans, and I just did the red carpet for Mr. Rogers, and I just look at The Americans and how amazing a job Matthew Rice did in the movie. And I'm a huge fan of The Americans. This is going to be an unbelievable show, so for sure for you. So good luck, congrats, and all the success. And where's the best place we can find information on you? But we'll definitely stay in touch, especially working with your show and what you're trying to do with the whole show. So good luck in that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Is your website the best place to connect with you and purchase your book?
Yeah, they can go to my website, which is LoriGottlieb.com, LoriGottlieb.com. They can look up Maybe You Should Talk to Someone and get it at any bookstore anywhere. They can follow me on Twitter at LoriGottlieb1.
All right. Well, thanks for calling, and best of luck. We'll stay in touch. Once we have the links, Eric's going to send all that stuff out to you. But I'll stay in touch and definitely want to follow up when you get closer to when your show debuts. Okay?
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye.
All right. You're listening to Neil Haley Show, powered by Life Improvement Radio, live from the Mind Book Fair. We'll be back in just a moment.
Thank you for listening to Helium Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and should not be construed in any way as advice from Helium Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, and editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the express written consent of Helium Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.